The eviction notice said I had 7 days to get out of the house my grandmother left me before she died. I read it standing barefoot on the front porch, still holding the mug of coffee I had poured 5 minutes earlier. The paper shook in my hand so badly the black letters blurred. At first, I thought it was a mistake. A cruel mistake. The kind of clerical nightmare that happens when a county office confuses two names or a bank sends the wrong file to the wrong address. But my name was there. My address was there. And under current owner, it no longer said Eleanor Hayes. It said Cobalt Ridge Development LLC. The old Victorian house on Magnolia Street, the house with my grandmother's stained glass windows and the porch swing my son Noah had slept on as a toddler, had been sold 3 weeks earlier. According to the county records, I had signed the deed myself. I stood there in the humid South Carolina morning with my heart hammering so hard I thought I might drop dead on my own front steps. The deputy who served the papers looked embarrassed. He was a young man, probably younger than Noah, with a buzz cut and kind eyes that kept sliding away from mine. "Ma'am, I'm sorry," he said. "I'm just serving the notice. The buyer has a recorded deed. If you're disputing it, you need an attorney." "I am the owner," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded thin, scraped raw. "I inherited this house from my grandmother 11 years ago. It was never marital property. My husband has no right to sell it." The deputy glanced at the paper again. "Then you need to move fast." I laughed once, but nothing about it was funny. "My husband is a real estate attorney." That made him look up. I closed the door after he left and sank right down onto the hardwood floor. The floorboards were the same ones I had helped me grandmother polish when I was 12, back when she used to pay me $5 and a glass of sweet tea for serious work. The house smelled like lemon oil, old books, rain, and the cinnamon rolls she used to bake every Sunday before church. It was the only place in the world where I had ever felt completely safe. My grandmother Ruth had raised me there after my mother disappeared into pills and men and my father decided fatherhood was optional. Ruth Hayes had been 5 feet tall, sharp as a tack, and impossible to intimidate. She taught me how to balance a checkbook, change a lock, plant hydrangeas, and never apologize for taking up space. When she died, she left me the house with one sentence in her will: "So Eleanor will always have a door that opens for her." And now my husband had sold that door. My phone buzzed on the floor beside me. Daniel. I stared at his name until the screen went dark. Then it lit up again with a text. "Eleanor, this is complicated. Don't make a scene. I'll explain when I get back." He had been in Atlanta for work for almost 4 weeks. He had missed Noah's 19th birthday dinner. He had stopped answering my calls 6 days ago. And now he was texting me like he had dented my car. Not sold my entire life out from under me. I called him. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. The third time, I left a message. "You sold my grandmother's house," I said. "You forged my name. I don't know where you are, Daniel, but I hope you're somewhere with good lawyers. Because when I find you, being my husband will be the least useful thing you've ever been." Then I stood up. I didn't cry yet. I think shock held my body together like duct tape. I put on black slacks, a white blouse, and the pearl necklace my grandmother had worn to court when she fought her brother over family land and won. I drove downtown to Daniel's firm, Whitmore and Ellison, a polished real estate law office with frosted glass doors, brass lettering, and a conference room named after some dead judge Daniel pretended to admire. For 14 years, I had helped build that office without a title and without a paycheck. When Daniel and his best friend Mark Ellison started the firm, I was the one who cleaned the bathroom before their first client meeting because they couldn't afford a janitor. I organized dinners for investors. I proofread contracts. I charmed the wives of developers who treated me like decoration. I stayed home with Noah so Daniel could attend networking weekends at golf resorts and come back smelling like bourbon and expensive cologne. And somehow, Daniel still liked to call the firm his sacrifice. The receptionist, Amber, stood the second she saw me. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said, too quickly. "Daniel isn't in today." "I know." Her smile trembled. "Do you have an appointment with Mr. Ellison?" "I have an eviction notice." Her face went pale. I walked past her desk toward Daniel's office. "Mrs. Whitmore, I can't let you." I turned back. "Amber, I have brought you soup when you had the flu, covered for you when Daniel forgot your Christmas bonus, and watched you cry in my kitchen over a man named Brad who sold your concert tickets. Do not make me embarrass you in front of the lobby." She stepped aside. Daniel's office was almost empty. Not messy. Empty. The silver-framed photo of Noah's graduation was gone. His laptop was gone. The fountain pens he lined up like trophies were gone. The lower drawers off his desk hung open, stripped clean. Even the humidor I hated had vanished from the shelf. It felt less like a business trip and more like a man had erased himself before running. "Eleanor." I turned. Mark Ellison stood in the doorway. He had been Daniel's best friend since law school, best man at our wedding, and the man Noah called Uncle Mark until he turned 15 and decided that sounded childish. Mark was handsome in a tired, moneyed way, with silver starting at his temples and a lawyer's ability to look sympathetic without committing to anything. But that morning, he looked wrecked. His tie was loose. His shirt was wrinkled. There were dark hollows under his eyes. "Where is my husband?" I asked. "I don't know. Try again." He glanced down the hallway and stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Daniel said he needed to handle a personal emergency. He left last Friday. He sold my house." Mark went still. "What?" "My grandmother's house. The house Daniel always said was a money pit. The house he wanted him to sell when the developer offered $2.8 million last year. That house." Mark swallowed. "That property was yours. Separate inheritance, Daniel couldn't sell it without your signature." "He had my signature." Something moved behind his eyes. Not surprise. Fear. That was the first moment I understood this was bigger than my husband being desperate or stupid. Mark knew something. Maybe not everything. But enough. "I can help you review the documents," he said carefully. I walked to Daniel's desk and picked up a paperweight shaped like a tiny glass courthouse. I remembered buying it for him after he won his first major zoning case. I remembered how he kissed my forehead and said, "Couldn't have done it without you," then introduced me at the celebration dinner as "my wife, she keeps me sane," while every man at the table asked him legal questions and every woman asked me where I got my dress. I set that paperweight down. "No," I said. "You can tell Daniel I know. Tell him I am done being the quiet wife in the corner of the room." Mark's voice dropped. "Eleanor, listen to me. Be careful." That made me laugh for real. "You boys always tell women to be careful right after you give us something to survive." I left him standing in that empty office. In the parking garage, I finally cried, not pretty tears. Not movie tears. I folded over my steering wheel and sobbed until my ribs hurt. I cried for my grandmother. I cried for Noah. I cried for the 22-year-old version of myself who believed Daniel Whitmore when he said he wanted to build a life, not just use mine as scaffolding. Then I wiped me face, fixed my lipstick in the rearview mirror, and called Claire Bennett. Claire had been my roommate at the University of Georgia, my maid of honor, and, at that moment, the only person alive I trusted more than myself. She was now an assistant U.S. attorney who specialized in financial crimes, which was exactly the kind of friend you need when your husband sells your house with a fake signature. She answered on the second ring. "Ellie? Daniel sold my house." Silence. Then her voice sharpened. "Say that again." "He forged my signature and sold Magnolia Street to Cobalt Ridge Development." "Are you alone?" "Yes." "Good. Do not go home. Do not call Daniel again. Come to my office. Bring the eviction notice, your ID, any banking records you have, and every ounce of anger you can carry." Within 2 hours, Claire had pulled the recorded deed, the title transfer, and the escrow paperwork through contacts who owed her favors and feared her more than they feared God. My signature was there. Perfectly shaped, smooth. Elegant. Almost mine. But not mine. The house had been sold for $1.1 million, less than half of what Cobalt Ridge had offered meth year before. The funds had moved from escrow to a business account connected to Daniel's firm, then split into 3 wire transfers. One went offshore. One went to an account in Nevada. One was still pending. Claire looked at the screen, her jaw tight. "Ellie," she said, "this is not a husband secretly selling property because he's bored. I know. This is structured. Fast. Dirty. Whoever helped him knew how to move money." I opened our joint bank account on my phone. The balance was $23.18. I thought I was already numb. Then I checked Noah's college fund. Empty. For a second, the room tilted. Noah had worked weekends at a marina since he was 16. He had contributed birthday money, summer paychecks, graduation checks from relatives he barely knew. He wanted to study architecture at Clemson because he loved old buildings and said he wanted to save houses like ours. Daniel had stolen that too. Claire reached across the desk and took my phone before it slipped out of my hand. "I'm going to ask you something," she said. "Did Daniel have gambling debts?" I looked up. "No. Daniel hates gambling. He says casinos are for men who can't do math." "Affairs?" I would have said yesterday. "Business trouble?" He always said the firm was doing well. That doesn't answer the question. Before I could respond, my phone rang from an unknown number. Claire looked at the screen. Put it on speaker. I answered. For 3 seconds, all I heard was breathing, then Daniel said, "Eleanor." I closed my eyes. His voice sounded smaller than I had ever heard it. "Where are you?" I asked. "I can't tell you. You sold my house. I had no choice." You forged my name. I was trying to protect you. That sentence was so disgusting I almost threw the phone. You protected me by stealing my grandmother's house and our son's college fund? I owed money. Claire went very still. I kept my voice calm, though my hand was shaking. To who? People you don't say no to. What people? The Harrow Group. Claire's face changed. Daniel kept talking, fast and panicked. It started as a bridge loan for a client deal. Mark said it was temporary. Then there were fees, penalties, threats. I thought I could fix it. Mark? He went quiet. Daniel, Claire said, his breathing hitched. Who is that? Claire Bennett. And you should know we already have the forged deed, the wires, the escrow trail, and the recorded transfer. Eleanor, Daniel whispered. Please don't dot his. I leaned toward the phone. You had 14 years to know me as your wife, I said. Now you're going to meet the woman my grandmother raised. Then I hung up. That night, Claire drove me back to Magnolia Street with 2 federal agents parked discreetly down the block. She wanted me to pack a bag and leave. I wanted 10 minutes inside the house before it became evidence, a crime scene, or someone else's property. I walked from room to room touching things like a person saying goodbye. The dining room table where Ruth taught me poker and told me never to marry a man who could lie while making eye contact. The kitchen doorway where Noah had measured himself every birthday until got taller than me at 14. The blue bedroom where I recovered after my C-section while Daniel complained that newborn crying made him useless in court. In Daniel's office, drawers had been cleaned out. But my grandmother had taught me that men who think they are clever usually hide things in places only other men would check. So I ignored the desk and went straight to the bookshelves. Daniel hated books. His leather-bound legal volumes were for show. I pulled out a fake copy of the South Carolina Property Code that I had once teased him about because it opened like a box. Inside was a small black ledger, dates, initials, amounts, addresses, and one line that made my skin go cold. Me guaranteed 2.4M. Magnolia collateral if D defaults. Me. Mark Ellison. I was still holding the ledger when something scraped under the front door. Claire drew her weapon before I even turned. An envelope slid across the foyer floor. Black. Unmarked. Inside was a single sentence printed in block letters. Your husband isn't the only one who has tope. For the first time that day, I felt afraid. Not because Daniel had betrayed me. Because someone else had been watching. I didn't sleep that night. Claire put me in her guest room and made coffee strong enough to strip paint while 2 agents sat outside her house in an unmarked SUV. I kept seeing that sentence in my mind. Your husband isn't the only one who has to pay. By 6:30 in the morning, Claire had filed an emergency motion to stop the eviction and flagged the transfer with the county recorder. She also contacted a federal task force because the name Daniel had said on the phone was not some neighborhood bookie. The Harrow Group had been on law enforcement's radar for years. On paper, it was a private investment network that funded real estate redevelopment, sports bars, and offshore consulting. In reality, according to Claire, it laundered money through distressed properties, underground sports betting, and shell companies that appeared and disappeared faster than a politician's promise. They buy silence, Claire said, sliding a folder across her kitchen table. They don't always buy property. I stared at the photocopy of my forged signature. Then they bought the wrong woman's house. Our first stop was Cobalt Ridge Development. Its office was in a renovated warehouse near the river, all exposed brick, black steel, and expensive minimalist furniture that made poverty look like a design choice. The owner, Brent Caldwell, had the tan of a man who considered golf a business expense and the smile of someone used to women accepting bad news politely. He kept us waiting for 22 minutes. Claire let him. When his assistant finally let us into his office, he spread his hands like assassinator. Mrs. Whitmore, I understand this is emotional. I sat across from him and placed the eviction notice on his desk. Don't call theft emotional just because you prefer paperwork. His smile tightened. Claire laid down the deed, the complaint, the forged signature analysis request, and a copy of the wire summary. You purchased a property for $1.1 million when your own company offered $2.8 million last year, she said. You wired funds through a law firm account connected to the seller's husband. If you want to claim good faith, Mr. Caldwell, I suggest you find a better costume. His face lost color in stitches. We relied on title. Title relied on a forged signature, I said. He looked at Claire, not me. Men like him always looked at the person they thought held the weapon. They rarely understood that the quiet woman at the table might be the reason the weapon was loaded. We were told there was marital consent. By whom? Claire asked. I'd have veto check. Check fast. He leaned back. Are you threatening me? No, Claire said. I'm documenting how quickly you choose cooperation over indictment. Brent Caldwell was not brave. Most men who make fortunes from loopholes are terrified of rooms without exits. By noon, Cobalt Ridge agreed to pause all possession actions and cooperate with the investigation. By 4 p.m., their attorney had offered to reverse the transaction if the court approved. By 6 p.m., Claire said we had won the first battle. But I didn't feel victory. A house can be returned on paper. A marriage cannot. I finally called Noah that evening. He was at Clemson, 3 hours away, finishing his first semester. I wanted to protect him. Mothers love that lie. We call it protection when really we are postponing pain because we cannot bear to watch it arrive. Mom, he said. Is Dad with you? He hasn't answered in days. I sat on Claire's back steps while the sun went down behind the trees. No, sweetheart. What's going on? There's trouble with the house. What kind of trouble? I closed my eyes. Your father did something illegal. The silence that followed was worse than screaming. Did he hurt you? Not, what did he do? Not, are you sure? My 19-year-old son's first question was whether his father had hurt me. That told me more about my marriage than I wanted to know. Not physically, I said. What did he do? He used a forged signature to sell Magnolia Street. Noah inhaled sharply. He sold Grandma Ruth's house? Yes. Can he do that? No. And I'm fighting it. Another pause. My college fund, he said. I couldn't answer fast enough. Mom. He took it. I heard him breathe once. Then again. When he spoke, his voice was flat. I'm coming home. Noah, I'm coming home. He arrived after midnight with red eyes and one backpack. He hugged me so hard I almost broke. He smelled like rain, laundry detergent, and the cheap coffee he drank on the drive. I hate him, he said into my shoulder. No, you don't. He pulled back, and his face looked older. Don't tell me what I feel just because you're scared off it. That shut me up. The next morning, we went back to Magnolia Street with Claire and a locksmith. The emergency order had been granted, which meant Cobalt Ridge could not enter or remove anything while the fraud claim was pending. The front door opened like it had been waiting. Noah stopped in the foyer. He touched the wall where Ruth had marked his height every summer with pencil lines and dates. The last mark said, Noah, 17, thinks he's grown. He laughed once, and it cracked halfway through. Then he saw Daniel's office. Did he hide anything here? I showed him the ledger. His eyes moved over the initials and numbers. Me, he said. Uncle Mark? I nodded. He looked like I had hit him. Mark had taken Noah fishing after Daniel missed his 10th birthday. Mark had sent him a first edition book on Frank Lloyd Wright when he got accepted to architecture school. Mark had sat at our Thanksgiving table for more than a decade. Betrayal has layers. The first cut is what someone did. The second is realizing how long they smiled while planning it. Claire wanted to bring Mark in quietly, but I wanted to look him in the face first. She hated the idea. I reminded her that I was not asking permission. So she compromised. I text Mark from my phone. We need to talk. Noon. Waterfront Park. He replied in under 1 minute. Come alone. Claire laughed when she saw it. Men really do think women in danger are stupid. I wore a wire under my blouse and met him near the fountain while Claire and 2 agents watched from different angles. Mark arrived in sunglasses and a navy jacket, scanning the park like a man who had watched too many movies and learned nothing useful from them. You shouldn't be here, he said. Then you shouldn't have come. His mouth tightened. Eleanor, I'm trained to help you. By guaranteeing Daniel's loan? He flinched. There it was. Not enough for a conviction, maybe. Enough for me. I don't know what he told you, Mark said. I found the ledger. His face changed. Where? In the house Daniel sold. He stepped closer. Give it to me. I smiled, and for a second I saw fear replace calculation. No. Do you understand what you're doing? I'm starting to. He leaned toward me, voice low. Daniel was drowning before I ever introduced him to anyone. He had debts from deals you never knew about. He wanted the big life. The judges' dinners, the club memberships, the developers calling him by his first name. You think he was some innocent man I corrupted? No. Your husband wanted to be rich more than he wanted to be good. That hurt because part of me believed it. But you helped him put up my house as collateral, I said. He said you would agree. He lied. Mark gave a bitter little laugh. Of course he lied. Daniel lies when the truth would work better. Where is he? Mark looked past me toward the water. There's a cabin near Lake Hartwell. Daniel uses it when he needs to disappear. Yours? A client's. Take me. His head snapped back, no. Then I'll tell Claire you refused. He stared at me. You brought Claire. I brought a lot of people. For 3 seconds, I thought he might run. Then he exhaled. Fine. But if we go now. Claire tried to stop me. I told her I needed Daniel alive, talking, and cornered. She said that was exactly how people got shot. We argued in the parking lot until Noah stepped between us. I'm going, he said. No, I said, and Claire said it at the same time. He looked at me. He stole from me too. You're not bait. Neither are you. That was the first time I saw myself through my son's eyes. Not as the mother protecting him, but as a person standing too close to a fire and calling it strategy. In the end, Claire won 1 point and lost another. Noah stayed with her team. I rode with Mark in his SUV while federal agents followed far enough back not to scare him. The drive took almost 4 hours. Mark talked too much. Guilty men often do. He told me Daniel had been investing in risky redevelopment deals for years. He said Daniel borrowed money to cover losses, then borrowed more to hide the borrowing. He said the Harrow people were not cartel monsters, but bankers with criminal habits, which somehow made them worse. Why didn't you warn me? I asked. He kept his eyes on the road. Because you would have left him. And Daniel would have collapsed. I turned to him. You protected him from consequences by handing me to them. His fingers tightened on the wheel. You don't understand what was at stake. No, Mark. I understand exactly what was at stake. My house. My son's future. My name on a forged crime. You just think stakes only count when men are gambling. He said nothing after that. The cabin sat at the end of a dirt road surrounded by pine trees. A gray lake flashed through the branches. There was a black pickup parked near the porch. Daniel's rental car was not there. Inside, the place smelled like stale beer, damp wood, and panic. Clothes were scattered across the floor. A burner phone lay smashed beside the sink. On the coffee table sat a photo of Noah's high school graduation, torn in half. Noah's half was missing. Mine was face down. Daniel's was crumpled in the fireplace. He was here, I said. Mark stood by the window. Yes. Something in his voice made me turn. He wasn't looking inside the cabin. He was looking down the road. Mark? He went pale. Those aren't Claire's people. A black SUV rolled into view, slow and deliberate. Then another. Mark grabbed my arm. Back door. Now. For one stupid second, I didn't move. My brain refused to accept that my life had become the kind of story I would have turned off for being too dramatic. Then the front door exploded inward. Mark shoved me toward the kitchen. Run. A gunshot cracked through the room. Wood splintered from the doorframe above my head. Mark cursed and stumbled, clutching his shoulder. Blood spread between his fingers. I ran through the back door, down the rotting steps, and into the trees. Branches tore at my face. My shoes slipped in pine needles. I heard men shouting behind me. I heard Mark groan. I heard an engine. I heard the sound of my own breathing turning wild and animal. I hid under the collapsed side of an old boat shed near the lake, pressing my hand over my mouth while mosquitoes bit my neck and dirt soaked through my slacks. After 17 minutes, my phone vibrated. Claire. I answered with shaking fingers. They came, I whispered. They took Mark. Daniel isn't here. Stay hidden, she said. We're 8 minutes out. When federal agents reached the cabin, the SUVs were gone. So was Mark. There was blood on the floor, burned papers in the fireplace, tire tracks in the mud, and a second black envelope nailed to the porch post with a pocket knife. This one had 2 words. Last warning. Claire wanted me in protective custody immediately. Noah wanted to see me. I wanted to tear the whole world apart with my bare hands. Instead, I stood in the doorway of that cabin while agents photographed evidence and realized something that made my stomach twist. Whoever had come for Mark did not search the cabin. They had gone straight in, fired just enough to scare us, and left with exactly 1 man. It looked like a kidnapping. But it felt staged. I didn't say that out loud. Not yet. For 3 days, I lived in a federal safe apartment with my son sleeping in the next room and 2 agents posted outside the door. The apartment had beige walls, cheap blinds, and a sofa that smelled like disinfectant. It was the kind of place where people wait for life to either resume or end. Noah barely slept. He spent hours at the kitchen table drawing the Magnolia Street house from memory. Elevations, window trim, porch columns. The curve of the staircase. At 2 a.m. on the second night, I found him sketching the stained glass transom above the front door. You should rest, I said. He didn't look up. If they take the house, I want to remember it right. They're not taking it. He kept drawing. You don't know that. I sat across from him. No. But I know who I come from. His pencil stopped. Grandma Ruth? She once sued the city because they tried to widen the road. Through her garden. Everyone told her she couldn't win. Did she? She made them move the road 8 feet. That got the smallest smile out of him, then his face hardened again. Dad knew what that house meant. Yes. So he didn't just steal money. No, he tried to erase us. I had no gentle answer for that. The next morning, Claire came in carrying a folder and the expression she wore when the truth was useful but ugly. They found Daniel, she said. I stood so fast the chair scraped the floor. Where? Miami International. He was trying to board a flight to Buenos Aires using a fake passport. Noah let out a sound that was almost a laugh. He was leaving? Claire nodded. With $186,000 in cash and a watch worth more than my car. I gripped the counter. And Mark? Claire's eyes shifted to mine. That's the other thing. She opened the folder and laid out still images from a gas station security camera 40 miles from the cabin. Mark Ellison stood under fluorescent lights beside one of the men who had supposedly kidnapped him. His shoulder was bandaged. He was drinking coffee. He was not restrained. He was not afraid. He was smiling. Noah whispered, no. Claire tapped another photo. 20 minutes after that, Mark withdrew cash from an account under a shell company. Then he disappeared. I stared at the image until my eyes burned. The kidnapping had been theater. The blood was real enough to sell the lie. The gunfire was real enough to scare me into hiding. But Mark had not been dragged into danger. He had walked out with it. Used me, I said. Claire nodded. He used Daniel, too. And now Daniel is stalking. Noah looked up sharply. What is he saying? That Mark has been laundering money through Whitmore and Ellison for years. Daniel claims he got involved after Mark put firm accounts at risk and pressured him to cover gaps. I don't know how much of that is true and how much is Daniel trying to save himself. I knew Daniel well enough to know the answer was probably both. Can I see him? I asked. Claire frowned. You do not owe him that. I know. Then why? Because I want to watch him understand that I survived. Noah stood. I'm going to. No, he stared at me. Mom. You can hate him from outside that room. You don't have to sit across from him while he triesto make his guilt sound like love. His eyes filled, but he nodded. The detention center smelled like bleach, metal, and despair. I wore my blue suit and my grandmother's pearls. Not for Daniel. For me. When they brought him in, I almost didn't recognize him. Daniel Whitmore had always been polished. Clean shave. Expensive watch. Collar stiff enough to cut skin. He believed presentation was a form of truth. Now he looked smaller. His beard was uneven. His eyes were bloodshot. The beige jail uniform swallowed him. He sat across from me behind the glass and picked up the phone with both hands. Ellie, he said. The nickname hit something old and bruised. You don't get to call Medhat. He nodded quickly. Eleanor. I'm sorry. Use your 10 minutes better. His eyes shone. I never meant for it to go this far. You forged my signature. I panicked. You drained our accounts. They were going to come after you. You stole from Noah. His face twisted. I was going to put it back. That made me lean closer. You were arrested at an airport with cash and a fake passport. I was trying to stay alive. No. You were trying to stay free. He pressed his forehead to the glass. I lost control. No, Daniel. You made choices. Lots of them. You chose to borrow money. You chose to hide it. You chose Mark. You chose the Harrow Group. You chose to use my house because it was the only thing in our life you could not charm, bully, or finance. He closed his eyes. I hated that house. I know. It made me feel like a guest in my own marriage. I stared at him. That house gave me shelter before you ever gave me a ring. You were a guest because you never respected what it held. He cried then. Quietly. Pathetically. It hot seeing him cry would satisfy me. It didn't. It only made me tired. There's money, he whispered. What? 4.3 million frozen through an account Mark controls. Some of it is yours. Some of it is Noah's. I gave Claire the routing trail. Why? Because Mark is going to blame you. I went cold. Daniel wiped his face. He has documents. Emails. Audio. He built a file making it look like you knew about the sale and helped structure the wires. He said if everything collapsed, we needed a civilian face. Someone sympathetic. Someone people would believe got manipulated. I could barely breathe. He picked me. Daniel looked ashamed. I let him. There it was. Not the theft. Not the forgery. The final insult. They had not only stolen from me. They had planned to dress me in their crimes and leave me standing there while they ran. You are going to testify, I said. I already agreed. No. You are going to testify clearly. No soft words. No mistakes. No pressure. You are going to say what you did, what Mark did. And what you tried to do to me. He nodded. And then, I said, you are going to write Noah a letter telling him the truth without asking him for forgiveness. Daniel's face crumpled. Does he hate me? I looked at him for a long moment. He knows you. That hurt him more than yes. Claire moved fast after that. Within 1 week, federal agents raided Astrid's unit outside North Charleston, rented under the name of a dead paralegal who had once worked for Whitmore and Ellison. Inside they found forged notary stamps, blank deed forms, external drives, burner phones, and printed files organized by last name. Mine had a red tab. Inside was my manufactured confession. There were emails supposedly from me discussing liquidating family assets. There were bank forms with my forged initials. There was even an audio file of a woman's voice, close enough to mine to make Miskin crawl, saying, "Daniel and I both agreed the Magnolia property was the cleanest way to move the money." Claire played 6 seconds of it and stopped when she saw me face. "How?" I asked. "Voice cloning," she said. "Or a very good impersonator. We'll prove it's fake." But the thought still haunted me. My voice had been stolen. My name had been stolen. My home had been stolen. Some men do not just want your silence. They want to own the sound of you. The raid also exposed the deeper rot. Mark had not been Daniel's panicked rescuer. He had been the architect. For years, he used the firm to move dirty money through real estate closings, inflated consulting fees, and fake development loans. Daniel had discovered pieces of it, then joined when his own investments failed. The Harrow Group had financed the loans. Cobalt Ridge had been the cleanup crew. Buying properties fast and cheap before questions could catch up. Magnolia Street was supposed to be one more dirty transaction. Except my grandmother had made one move none of them knew about. When Ruth left Meth House, she had placed it in a family protection trust after her fight with the city. The deed transfer to me was valid, but the trust documents included a restriction requiring independent trustee approval for any sale before Noah turned 25. That trustee was an elderly attorney named Samuel Price, who had retired to Beaufort and still wrote letters by hand. Daniel had either missed it or assumed no one would check. Claire found Samuel alive, furious, and delighted to be useful. "I told Ruth that clause was excessive," he said over the phone. "She told me men become excessive when property is involved." I cried when I heard that. My grandmother had protected me from beyond the grave. The court hearing to freeze the sale became local news after our reporter caught wind of the federal investigation. At first, I hated the attention. Then Claire reminded me that secrecy had protected Daniel and Mark for years. So I walked into the courthouse through the front door. Reporters called my name. "Mrs. Whitmore, did your husband forge your signature? Did Cobalt Ridge know? Are you under investigation?" I stopped on the steps. Claire whispered, "You don't have to." But I wanted to. I looked directly at the cameras. My grandmother left me a home because she wanted me and my son to be safe. My husband and his partner tried to steal it, sell it, and use my name to hide their crimes. I am here today to take back what was mine and to make sure no family in this county gets robbed by men in expensive suits who think paperwork makes theft respectable. The clip went viral by lunch. By dinner, other families started calling Claire's office. A widow whose lake house had been purchased below value after a suspicious lien. A retired teacher whose brother's signature had appeared on a deed after his stroke. A young couple pressured into selling after a developer threatened legal fees they couldn't afford. Magnolia Street was no longer just my house. It was the loose thread that started pulling apart a whole expensive suit. Mark was arrested 12 days later near the Florida border. He had eaten his hair badly, shaved his beard, and carried 3 passports. The news showed him being led into a federal building with his hands cuffed in front of him, his mouth tight, his eyes still searching for someone else to blame. I thought I would feel triumphant. I felt calm. That surprised more. For months, Daniel had made me feel like a woman reacting to his life. Mark had made me feel like collateral. Cobalt Ridge had made me feel like a problem to be cleared from a property line. But watching Mark's face on the news, I understood something. Men like that are never as powerful as they look. They are just standing on top of everyone they convinced to stay quiet. The final confrontation happened in court. Daniel took the stand first. He looked at me once, then looked away. His voice shook as he admitted to forging my signature, draining the college fund, and authorizing the sale. He admitted Mark provided access to the Harrow loans. He admitted Cobalt Ridge knew the purchase price was suspicious. He admitted they discussed using me as a fallback explanation if investigators traced the wires. When the prosecutor asked whose idea it was to forge my name, Daniel paused. The whole courtroom held its breath. Then he said, "Mine." I didn't forgive him. But I respected that one honest syllable. Mark's attorney tried to make Daniel look like a desperate liar saving himself. Then Claire played the gas station footage. Mark smiling beside the man who kidnapped him. Mark withdrawing cash. Mark boarding a bus under a fake name. Then came the audio expert, who proved my so-called confession had been manufactured from clips of my voice taken from old firm dinner speeches and charity videos Daniel had saved. I heard myself say things I had never said. My hands shook under the table. Noah reached over and took them. The last witness was Samuel Price. He was 82, wore a bow tie, and moved with a cane he seemed prepared to use as a weapon. He explained the trust clause in a voice so dry the judge had to hide a smile. Mrs. Ruth Hayes did not trust easily, he said. In my legal opinion, that distrust has aged beautifully. For the first time in weeks, I laughed. By the end of the hearing, the judge voided the sale, froze related assets, and referred Cobalt Ridge for further investigation. The house was restored fully to my control. Cobalt Ridge later paid a settlement large enough to rebuild Noah's fund, repair the house, and fund legal aid for other property fraud victims. Daniel pled guilty to fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and financial crimes in exchange for cooperation. Mark faced heavier charges tied to laundering, witness intimidation, and obstruction. Justice did not arrive like thunder. It arrived like paperwork, testimony, sleepless nights, and women refusing to be embarrassed out of telling the truth. The day I returned to Magnolia Street for good, Noah came with me. The porch had leaves piled in the corners. The hydrangeas needed pruning. Someone had cracked one pane in the kitchen window. The house looked tired. So did I. But when I unlocked the front door, the old hinges gave their familiar sigh, and I swear I felt my grandmother in that sound. Noah stepped in first. He stood in the foyer beneath the stained glass, sunlight breaking blue and gold across his face. "We're home," he said. That was when I finally broke. I cried against the banister while my son held me, and this time the tears were not helpless. They were grief leaving the body because it had somewhere safer to go. In the weeks that followed, I changed everything Daniel had touched. I sold the leather sofa he loved because he said it made the living room look important. I replaced it with 2 deep green armchairs and a couch comfortable enough to nap on. I painted the kitchen yellow, the color Ruth always wanted and Daniel always called too cheerful. I planted lavender by the back steps. It turned Daniel's office into a reading room with Noah's architecture books, Ruth's old Bible, and a framed copy of the court order voiding the sale. Claire said that last part was dramatic. I said she was welcome. Noah took a semester off. At first, I worried he was giving up. Then I found him meeting with Samuel Price, learning about preservation law, property records, and trust protections. He said old houses needed architects, but people needed advocates too. "You sure?" I asked him. He looked around the reading room. "I think Grandma Ruth recruited me from heaven." I believed him. Daniel wrote Noah 6 letters from prison before Noah opened one. I didn't ask to read it. Afterward, Noah sat on the porch for almost an hour. Then he came inside and handed me the envelope. "He told the truth," he said. "Are you okay?" "No," I nodded. He looked at me with eyes so much like mine. "Do I have to forgive him to move on?" "No, do you?" I looked through the doorway into the house that had survived my grandmother's brothers, city engineers, termites, hurricanes, my husband's greed, and a developer's signature. "No," I said. "Forgiveness is not rent I owe for surviving." He let out a breath, like he had been waiting for permission to stop pretending. "But I don't want to hate him forever," he said. "Then don't build a house for hatred. Let it pass through when it needs to. Just don't give it a bedroom." He smiled a little. "That sounds like Grandma Ruth." Itis. 1 year after the eviction notice, I hosted dinner at Magnolia Street. Claire came with flowers and a bottle of wine she claimed was too good for my cooking. Samuel Price came in his bow tie and flirted shamelessly with my neighbor Mrs. Alvarez, who had brought peach cobbler and every rumor within 6 blocks. Noah invited 3 friends from school, and I invited 4 families whose property cases had opened after mine went public. We'd on the porch because Ruth always said food tasted better where mosquitoes had to work for it. Before dessert, I brought out the eviction notice. Everyone went quiet. The paper was framed now. Not beautifully. Just simply, in blackwood, with the court order tucked behind it. Claire raised an eyebrow. "You framed trauma?" "I framed evidence." Noah lifted his glass. "To evidence." Samuel tapped his cane against the porch floor. "To women who read the fine print." Mrs. Alvarez said, "To men learning fear." We laughed so hard I almost spilled my wine. Then Noah stood. He was taller than Daniel now. Broader in the shoulders. Still young, but not untouched by life anymore. He looked at me, and his voice caught. "To my mom," he said. "Dad thought he could sell the house because he never understood it. This was never just wood and bricks. It was where she became safe. And when he tried to take it, she didn't just take it back for us. She made sure other people could fight too." I tried to tell him to sit down before I cried. I failed. After everyone left, I sat alone on the porch swing. The same porch where I had read the eviction notice. The same boards beneath my feet. The same magnolia tree leaning over the sidewalk like an old friend with gossip. The city hummed beyond the yard. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. The stained glass glowed behind me. I thought about Daniel in prison. I thought about Mark awaiting trial. It hot about Brent Caldwell selling his boat to pay lawyers. I thought about my grandmother standing in this doorway, small and fierce, telling me at 16 that love without respect is just a nicer word for trespassing. For years, I believed my marriage was a house with cracks. I kept patching. I kept painting. I kept moving furniture in front of damage and calling it a home. But some houses are not meant to be saved. Some are meant to teach you how strong your hands are when you finally tear them down. Daniel thought he could sell my past, steal my present, and disappear with my son's future. He was wrong. My house came back. My son stood beside me. My name stayed clean. And I learned that when someone tries to evict you from your own life, you do not begut the door. You find the deed. You expose the forgery. You change the locks. And then you sit on the porch that was always yours, barefoot and unafraid, while the whole world watches the men who underestimated you lose everything they stole.